And now, Pat Goss.
Hi, everybody. Hey, got a question for you. How do you know if a shop has trained technicians or burger flippers? Actually, there's no foolproof way, but here are some things to look for. First, there are a lot of certification programs for techs, so ask to see their certificates. But that won't work in all those illegal back alley shops that don't have certified techs. So how do you tell if they know what they're doing? Well, you can't, and that begs a bigger question. Why go slumming in the first place? Yeah, I know, dirt cheap prices, but please, use just a tiny bit of your common sense. Good car repairs are expensive. Remember, good parts cost more than bad parts, than junk parts and all of that. Good techs are more expensive than bad techs. Good test equipment costs more than crap equipment, and so on. See, a shop that has skilled techs and quality equipment will normally cost more per hour, but will usually be better at diagnosing and fixing problems, so you're paying for actual work rather than guesswork. And even if the hourly rate is higher, skill and equipment reduce repair time, so the overall cost is lower. Plus, quality shops usually sell better quality parts, which last longer, which means lower cost per mile and less chance of defects, so it's less likely you'll waste time going back for warranty. Funny how it all works, but often the cheapest guy in town is the most expensive at checkout. Anyway, other ways to tell if you're dealing with a smart tech or a dummy is by looking and listening. Look around. Is the shop generally clean and neat? No old parts outside or cars with missing parts sitting around, like you might see in a junkyard. Is there a clean waiting area that's well stocked with creature comforts in case you want to wait for your repair? Mostly common sense things, yet so many of you go to those creepy rat hole shops trying to save a couple of bucks and wind up getting screwed. Listen, well, that's what you do next. Do the techs use proper terms to describe what they're doing? Like, I found why your car won't start. It doesn't have any fire, key word, fire, to the plugs. Fire? Perhaps you should offer a match. Fire? What the hell? Fire and cars do not mix. Fire? The tech should be explaining the voltage needed to create the spark at the spark plugs. That's what's needed to ignite the fuel in the cylinders, not fire. Another term that dummies use to describe electricity is juice, but they never tell you what kind of juice. Orange juice? Tomato juice? What? It's electricity, folks. There are lots of slang terms used by technicians who haven't spent much time in a classroom. Then, of course, there are the scary, stupid ones who tell you they can't find the cause of your problem, but don't worry, it won't hurt anything. Just come back when it gets worse. Are you freaking kidding me? The I have no idea what's wrong part is valid, but the don't worry, it won't hurt anything part is utter insanity. After all, if you don't know what's causing a problem, how could you possibly know it won't hurt other parts and push the cost way up? Or worse yet, how could this moron who doesn't know what the problem is possibly know it won't hurt or kill you? Hey, it's remarkably difficult to bring the car back if you're in a coffin after the bad part fails. So shop wisely. Look for ASE certified techs, good equipment, and a good-looking shop. Quality usually saves money in the long run. Avoid the cheapest guy in town because he will probably either upsell you to a costlier repair or sell you cheap-ass parts that don't offer good value. Also, watch out for that friend of a friend who fixes cars in his home garage. Do-it-yourselfers rarely have everything needed to sort out problems in modern cars. They're illegal. They don't have insurance to cover their mistakes. They don't pay taxes like you and I do. They don't have a business license. They don't recycle, and the list goes on and on. Because backyard mechanics don't pay for any of your legal protections, they often make a lot of money, but they have zero to lose, and you have no leverage to make things right when they mess up your car. Yep, as the Pilgrim Fathers used to say, you, my friend, are screwed. All right, look for a good shop, folks. Trying to save a couple bucks. I'm as frugal as the next guy, but got to tell you that sometimes you have to look, you have to pay a little bit more to make sure you get something of value. All right, now we have a special guest this morning to start off the show. We have Colin Dilley. He is Vice President of Technology at Prestone. Now, you've known the name Prestone forever. Let's talk to Colin and see what he can tell us about their products. Colin, welcome to Goss's Garage. Yes, sir. Give us a little bit of background about Prestone, if you would. All right, we have a technical issue. What else is new with Goss's Garage? We'll get reestablished with Colin here in just a moment and get him to where we can hear him. Couple of things. One of the things, of course, is we were talking about certifications and things like that in that opening little bit there. And remember that ASE certified technicians, they can be certified in any of a bunch of different areas. So say you want to go in and get a brake job done, you want to make sure that the technician who works on your car is going to be certified in brakes, not somebody who is certified in front ends or service writing or something like that. We are going to take a break right now, and we'll be right back, and hopefully we'll hook up with Colin Dilley from Prestone following this break.
Stay tuned. Pat will take your calls next at 844-885-4677. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
How quickly we forget. We're right back to using short-term logic to make long-term purchases. There's a huge increase in sales of big, thirsty vehicles. Trucks, SUVs, and other vehicles with dismal gas mileage are selling like hotcakes. Yes, they're wonderful, but can your budget support such a thirsty beast when gas prices go back to $4 a gallon? Did you plan on that? On the plus side, if you're considering a thrifty car, you might get a real deal. With so many drivers ignoring reality, there are more hybrid and plug-ins in stock. Traditionally, hybrids have not been a great deal because when gas prices are sky high, everyone wants one, which pushes their prices up. Sometimes so high that you might have to pay over window sticker to get a hybrid or a plug-in. But higher purchase prices mean it can take years to break even through savings at the pump. It has taken many drivers so long to break even that trade-in time came before they broke even. But cheaper gas zaps hybrid demand, and less demand can mean a better deal. So if you've been thinking about an economy car, now might be the time. That's using long-term logic to buy a long-term product. That's smart. Life changes at a ferocious pace these days, especially when it comes to maintaining our cars. For example, automatic transmissions now need regular fluid flushes. Transmission fluid breaks down with use, and although it may look fine, its additives wear out and it can no longer properly protect bands, clutches, seals, and other hugely expensive parts inside your transmission. Bottom line, more wear and a shorter transmission life. Now you can significantly extend transmission life with a BG transmission flush every 24 to 30,000 miles or 2 years. BG makes the best transmission flush machine I've ever tested. It renews all of the fluid in your transmission, not just a small part of it. The BG transmission flush machine is safe, too, because it uses the natural circulation of the transmission. Your transmission will work better and last longer. As with everything BG offers, this is a superior service. For more information, go to bgprod.com or bgfindashop.com.
This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss. Call the show now at 844-885-4677.
Okay, folks, welcome back to Goss's Garage. And we're going to try once more to see if we can get our connection straightened out with Colin Dilley. He is Vice President of Technology at Prestone. Colin, welcome to Goss's Garage.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
All righty. Hey, I think we finally maneuvered this modern technology.
Excellent.
All right. Can you give us a little background about Prestone? I think everybody knows Prestone as antifreeze, but certainly we want to talk about that. But there's a lot more to Prestone than just antifreeze, right?
Absolutely. So Prestone's been around now. It's been 90 years since we invented the ethylene glycol-based coolant, and we've been updating that coolant ever since with the ever-changing engine platforms out there. But as you said, Prestone is into a lot more than just antifreeze coolant now. Everything from windshield washer fluids to fuel additives to brake fluid and other fluids that are needed for the car. So if there's a fluid needed for the car, other than oil, Prestone provides it.
Okay. Now, I get a lot of questions about coolant. And for those of you who are still back a few years, coolant, we used to call it antifreeze, but today it serves multiple purposes. What are some of the purposes that a modern coolant serves, Colin?
Well, the coolant is designed primarily to make your engine run at the temperature that the engineers who designed that platform wanted your engine to run. And that means it will have the most miles per gallon and it will have the least wear going on because everything's designed around engine temperature. So coolant is there to keep the cooling system in good condition so that it can transfer heat from the engine to the radiator and out to the air so that your car is running smoothly and optimally. The antifreeze part of coolant really came about 90 or so years ago because back in the day, they used to use either pure alcohol, which didn't freeze but would burn really nicely, or they would use water, which would freeze. And as people know, freezing in your engine block equals cracked engine block. So the antifreeze really was an advertising thing to sell coolant, just to make sure it was winterproof.
You know, I can remember my grandparents talking about draining the cooling system in the car every night in the winter, and then they go out in the morning and put water back in it. That sounds like a really cumbersome operation.
A lot of work, and that's why antifreeze took off so well as a marketing ploy in many ways because it saved you all that hard work every day, and no one needs that extra chore in the morning.
Right. Now, this business of keeping cars at optimum temperature, we see every once in a while a car will come in with a check engine light, and we find that it has most of them generally have pure water in them, and maybe in the summer. And because of the way the sensors are set up on some of these cars, if you don't have the right concentration of coolant, it transfers heat differently or something. I don't know quite what happens, but it can actually trigger a check engine light.
And not only does it not transfer heat at the right rate so that the engine doesn't maintain its optimal temperature, when you have just water in, you have no corrosion protection. And that means your steel and aluminum parts will corrode and rust, and that rust will come up into the coolant or the water, and it will find its way to the smallest aperture, which is usually your heater core or the radiator, blocking it up and further preventing the engine from cooling to the point where it should be.
Okay, yeah, that leads to overheating eventually.
Absolutely, and one of the primary reasons for having a good coolant in your car is to prevent corrosion from occurring and to keep your cooling system like new for the life of the car. And that can only happen if you maintain that cooling system. A neglected cooling system or a cooling system that is low on antifreeze leading to air pockets really can mean the death of your engine.
Now, one of the things we're seeing here in the shop that we didn't used to is we see some pretty nasty clogs and stuff like that, yet because everything in the engine that the coolant touches is either aluminum or it's plastic, we don't see the brown, muddy color like we used to.
That's right. The brown, muddy color came from your cast iron parts, which you'll still get in most engine blocks. The corrosion from aluminum tends to be a chalky white color.
Right.
And that's the stuff that will really start to build up in your heater core first and then your radiator. It always goes from the hot spot to the cool spot. And it's usually a sign that that coolant has been neglected and hasn't been changed when it should have been.
Yeah, so this business of people waiting to change their coolant until it looks muddy, that could be a big mistake in today's world.
A very big mistake. And listening to your introduction of your show, you've really got to take care of things and make sure you do it right with the right people when you start putting new coolant into your vehicle. Don't wait too long. Test it frequently. We recommend every time you change your oil, test your coolant. Make sure it's at a 50-50 mix. That means 50% coolant and 50% water. And really check the color of it. Any discoloration is time to change.
Okay, now, does Prestone have coolant test strips?
We have coolant test strips and we have coolant testers, which will test the concentration of your coolant. Okay,
so the do-it-yourselfer that wants to be on top of all of this, he could either buy a tester or buy the test strips and stay on top of it and know that everything was okay.
Exactly.
All right. What else should we be aware of here as far as coolant is concerned?
I think it's important to understand that engine platforms have changed significantly over the last 10 years. There's been a drive to increase miles per gallon and reduce emissions. And that's led the car companies to change their engine platform significantly. And they're putting a much higher stress on the coolant in the vehicles now. Coolant is really cooling everything from engines to transmissions and turbochargers now. So you really want to make sure you have a good quality new technology coolant. The older technologies that were silicone-based, they can't really hold up to those harsh conditions anymore. You really want to go for the organic acid technology, OAT. Prestone just introduced about 2 years ago Core Guard technology, and that's actually an interesting one. We've just finished a fleet of 18 vehicles to 150,000 miles. And I can honestly tell you that we have seen zero corrosion, zero buildup. The water pump, the radiator, the heat exchangers, they all look exactly the same as the day they were put in. So it shows that you do need to have a good quality coolant. Be careful of the cheap coolants. Often the cheap coolants are made with recycled glycol. That's the ethylene glycol base that gives you the antifreeze portion. And that can actually accelerate corrosion in your vehicle if you're using a recycled glycol. So just be careful what you get.
Yeah, you get what you pay for in today's world. That's for sure.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more with you, and I was nodding my head in agreement at the beginning of your show.
One other thing, do you have chemicals, and which ones would you recommend as far as added cooling system protection?
When it comes to added coolant protection, nothing beats putting in a good coolant, and there is no need for additional additives to it. It's complex chemistry, and if you start mixing chemistries, you have the ability to throw it out of whack and cause precipitate of the corrosion inhibitors to occur. So I always recommend topping up with like fluids. That way you're not going to have any chemical incompatibilities that could occur.
Okay, now folks, all of you listening and watching out there, pay attention to what he just said, because essentially if a little bit's good, that doesn't mean a whole lot more is a whole lot better. It may screw things up. So that's something that we find a lot of do-it-yourselfers doing, Colin. It's just, they think a little bit, so they're going to put more in, and that's not the case anymore with complex chemistry.
That is so true. And even the same with the amount of dilution you use. We see a lot of people thinking, oh, if I'm doing 50-50, 50% coolant, 50% antifreeze, then if I put 60%, it's going to be better, or 70% is even going to be more. But it doesn't work that way. You really have to keep it to what the manufacturer recommends. That's what the engine was designed for.
Very good. Well, Colin, I really appreciate it. How can people get more information about Prestone and Prestone products?
We have our website, www.prestone.com, and that has a wealth of information. And it can even tell you exactly what size your cooling system is. It's got a great wealth of information there, and a lot of how-tos onto how to keep your cooling system as it should be.
Yeah,
that would be the best spot.
I've been impressed with your website. I like some of your training things and so on. So that people go there, they can learn a lot. And the more you know about cars, folks, if you're driving one, the more you know about it, the less problems you're going to have overall, especially if you understand what you know about it. All right, Colin, I want to thank you very much. Appreciate it. Sorry for the mix-up there at the beginning.
Not a problem, and it was my pleasure talking to you.
Okay, take care. All right.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break, and then we're going to talk to George from Durwood, Maryland, coming up on Goss's Garage.
Operators are standing by to take your call for Pat at 844-885-4677. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
Think you'll get a deal buying a used car from an individual instead of a dealer? Possibly, but there's a good chance you'll get taken if you wind up dealing with a curbstoner. Curbstoners are low-life scum who buy cars with problems, cobble them together, roll back the miles, make them look good, and resell them. They usually claim the car belonged to a friend or relative, and there's a sad story about a death, financial woes, illness, or other tragedy. If you buy from one of these crooks, you'll probably get a great-looking car, but in poor mechanical or body condition at a slightly lower price. But you won't get a warranty or a good, reliable car. Curbstoner cars are often so bad they only have scrap value. There are Curbstoner cars all over the internet, in nearly every shopping center, and sitting along the road. total loss, flood cars, or a curbstoner favorite because there are tens of thousands of them, and they're easy to disguise. So when buying off the street, question everything. When was the title issued? Is it in the seller's name? Does it show the seller's proper address? Is it from another state? Of course, always have a shop check any used car and get a Carfax vehicle history report before paying a dime. Curbstoners are crooks who will happily steal your money, so be really careful. I get lots of questions about BG products, many about specific products or services like, is BG 44K really that good, or are BG transmission, cooling system, and power steering flushes actually necessary? But most popular of all, do I use BG products in my cars? Well, the answer to all of those questions is yes. A regular schedule of BG flushes and chemicals will deliver the longest possible life from all the lubricated and fuel delivery parts on your vehicles. And do I use BG products? You bet I do. I drive nice cars, and I drive a lot. Plus, my live radio and TV shows mean that my cars have to be absolutely reliable. A no start from dirty fuel injectors or a failed transmission just isn't acceptable in my life. Remember, deposits and dirty fluids ruin expensive parts. For reliability like I demand, visit one of the quality shops that sell BG products and perform BG services. To find a BG professional near you, bgfindashop.com.
This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss. Call the show now at 844-885-4677.
Make sure to subscribe to the Goss's Garage radio show on YouTube, where you can find tips and tricks to save you time and avoid headaches. All right, let's go to the phones. Let's talk to George from Durwood, Maryland. George, welcome to Goss's Garage.
Good afternoon, Pat. It's a pleasure to be here. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
Could you give me your impressions of a 2014 Jeep Patriot, and if you know of any potential issues with that vehicle as far as service and things like that? And then I'd like to know about the rotation of all-wheel drive vehicles and something about it has a CVT transmission, and I don't know anything about that.
Okay. Patriot is not the worst of the Jeeps, but it's close. I don't think it's been put on the avoid buying list yet, although it may at some point. But personally, here in the shop, we haven't seen that many problems with them. So I can't say that from my personal experience that it's been a horrible vehicle. So, good preventive maintenance. Now, one of the things that we're finding is that with CVT transmissions, now a CVT, if you could envision two cones, like two rollers with a V in the middle of them, and you run a belt between the two of them, if you could make one of them move closer together, the diameter of the roller would get larger, and if you made the other one go smaller at the same time, you would have a CVT, because that's the way they work. They have a belt, a metal belt inside, and the computer controls the diameter of the two cones in there, and they make one bigger, the other smaller, and then they reverse it for other load conditions and so on. So it's constantly varying the ratio. It doesn't have any gears or anything like that, doesn't shift, but it just continuously changes the size of these two rollers in there, so that you're always in the optimum ratio for the load being placed on the vehicle. Now, a lot of people don't like them, and that may be one of the reasons why some of these vehicles get a bad rap, because people are used to the shift, they feel the shift and so on, and although they may mimic a shift on a CVT, for the most part, there is no shifting. So that's one thing. The other thing is we get a lot of complaints on CVTs, and we trace a lot of it back to people using the wrong fluid. CVTs, as a class of transmission, have very specialized fluids, and you don't go out and buy any old transmission fluid to top it off, because if you do, some of them are so sensitive that like a cup of the wrong fluid can really screw things up. So that's my take on that. Engine-wise, I can't think of ever having a problem with one of those, not that we've seen, and I certainly don't get many questions about problems with the engines in them. Now
does it have a specific coolant that it uses?
Oh yeah, yeah. Everything has a vehicle-specific coolant these days.
Okay.
So just make sure, if you're going to buy, like we have the Prestone person on, make sure that the qualification numbers and so on the container meet the qualifications of the vehicle manufacturer. And typically you're going to find that they will. Now, as far as tire rotation on an all-wheel or four-wheel drive vehicle, any vehicle that doesn't have directional tires, you want to use a modified X rotation. And whether you use front-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive depends on the configuration of the vehicle if it didn't have all-wheel or four-wheel drive. Now, I don't remember whether the Patriot is available with two-wheel drive. If it is, and without the all-wheel drive system, if it's rear-wheel drive, use the rear-wheel rotation pattern. If without all-wheel drive, it would be a front-wheel drive vehicle, then use the front-wheel drive rotation.
The front-wheel drive rotation is you switch them when you move them back.
No.
Switch them when you move. Yes. Switch when you
Right.
move them back.
You X the two tires going onto the drive wheels.
Okay. Now that straightens it out.
Yeah. So if it's normally rear-wheel drive, you X the two going to the rear. If it's normally front-wheel drive, you X the two going to the front.
Now, do you service a CV transmission in
Oh,
the
yeah.
same way, like flushes, having it flush periodically like you would on a regular transmission?
Absolutely. Because CVTs tend to be a little fragile, a little bit more so, at least it appears that way, because some manufacturers are having problems with them and so on. So yes, flushing is a good way to go. You'll find a lot of shops that don't understand them. It'll tell you, oh no, you don't flush it. It's sealed, or it's lubricated for life, or all of these crazy ideas. There is no such thing so far as any type of lubricant that lasts forever. It all breaks down, it all becomes contaminated and so on. And clean, fresh fluid, whether it be in the engine, be in the transmission, whatever, keeping the fluid free from debris and so on, that's paramount.
All right. Well, I thank you very much. My daughter is considering purchasing one of those, and she lives in Indiana, so I'm not going to get a chance to see it. But I would just wanted to get some little bit of information about it, and you've been very helpful.
Okay. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Okay. We are now, speaking of lubrication and so on, we're going to talk to Chris Barker. He's the technical sales manager with Royal Purple Synthetic Oil. Chris, welcome to Goss's Garage.
Hi, Pat. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Hey, give us a little background on Royal Purple, if you would, please.
All right. Well, about 30 years ago, our founder, John Williams, this would be his second or third synthetic lubricant company that he started. But he was consulting in lubrication. He'd been in lubrication for a long time. And he had a particular former customer that was having a problem with a piece of equipment. And he developed some additive technology to put in a synthetic base stock that helped this compressor live a lot longer than it had been due to its particular operation requirements. We started off as an industrial lubricant company. The foundation of the company is this proprietary additive that Mr. Williams came up with and is the cornerstone of the performance that we offer. Let's see, probably 10 or 15 years after that, we started getting requests to work on automotive products. So we got into that business and everything's just grown from there.
Okay, now you have a full line of lubricants, right?
Yes, sir. We got engine oils, transmission fluids, gear oils. About the only thing that we don't offer is brake fluid is with respect to automotive stuff.
Okay. And one of the things that I get into all the time, people have all of these questions about synthetic products and so on. If you really want the most life out of your engine, or anything that's mechanical for that matter, you want a synthetic product.
Well, in general, that's true. I would rephrase that to using a premium product is always going to be the best choice for reliability and durability. The reason I say that is for synthetic, in air quotes, has become kind of shorthand for a better oil. But it is very possible to formulate a synthetic oil that is not that great and can be outperformed by a very high quality mineral oil. So really what you want to do is look past that moniker. I mean, using synthetic base stocks gives you an excellent foundation on which to build a lubricant, but the whole package has to be well formulated using great raw materials. If you use synthetic base stocks or do whatever you have to do to minimally qualify to be a synthetic lubricant, you can still get sold basically a bill of goods. So you're really looking for the reputation of the oil that you're looking at, and to a certain extent, price is going to be your guide. You get what you pay for to a great extent, just like other products.
Okay. Now, Royal Purple is certainly a premium product. There's no question about that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What else should we know about are there limitations as far as changing a car over to your product or anything like that?
There aren't. The reason being is most of our products are highly compatible with whatever came in the vehicle from the OEM or with official OEM replacement lubricants. And the reason being is we are almost always going to be the follow-up lubricant. So the last thing that our customers need is to have to go through extra steps and a lot of trouble just to be able to use our product. What is going to be important is ensuring that you have the correct product because, as you're well aware, different transmissions, like you were just discussing with CVTs, have different requirements, so you need to make sure you're using the right type of fluid. Engines are designed to work with certain viscosity grades to work the best, so you need to make sure you're using the correct engine oil to work best for your particular engine. But other than that, there shouldn't be any issues simply doing a good drain and switching over to our product.
Chris, I have to tell you a little story here. I think it's 2 weeks ago. I did a piece at the opening of the show about using proper viscosity and so on. And I opened up a can of worms like you would never believe with internet trolls calling me every kind of name that they could lay their tongue to and so on, telling me that I was an idiot and every car on the road should have 2050 or 2060 oil in it and stuff like that. And holy cow. So I'm glad to hear your recommendation to stay with, in general use, that is, stay with what's required for the car.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the engineering that's gone into the vehicle is way more in-depth than anybody might understand. Now, people say, well, they're just going with that light oil for fuel economy. Well, that's true, but the OEM is still very interested in durability of their components they make, especially those that offer long warranties. The last thing they really want is having a reputation for a piece of equipment that doesn't work well. And there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into making sure that these newer and often lighter oils are still going to provide the correct type of protection and adequate protection for a nice long life for the engine or transmission or gear oil.
Yeah, one of the things that we find here in the repair shop is that people who go to a significantly thicker oil, they may have check engine light and stuff like that from variable valve timing errors and so on, because it's all calibrated to work with that recommended viscosity.
That's correct. If you change nothing in an engine other than the viscosity grade of the oil, you're going to change the oil pressure that's generated. And these variable valve timing systems or cylinder deactivation systems typically run off of engine oil pressure to make them function. The computer is looking for a certain range of pressure, and if you deviate from what the OEM recommends for the viscosity grade too much, it's going to be in a range that the computer doesn't like. So it's typically not going to cause any damage, but usually you'll go into some sort of safe or limp mode, at least with respect to that system, to ensure that no damage happens to it. So yeah, that's a very good reason in modern cars to make sure that you use close to, if not exactly, the OEM recommended viscosity grade.
Now, these rules wouldn't necessarily apply if we're building a race engine or something like that. Then it might be a whole different scenario.
Oh, very true. One thing that I like to stress is heavier oil does not automatically equal better protection. A lot of it has to do with the quality of the fluid that you're using and the particular needs of the application. I mean, if you've got a sand rail that's used for competition and it's air cooled and all it ever sees is high temperatures, then by all means, go with that heavier oil. The oil is going to be running hotter, so while it operates, it's actually going to be thinner. That recovers when the oil cools off, but with higher temperatures, all oils thin out more. If you've made no drastic changes to the engine and you're starting with basically a factory type car, there's very little reason to deviate far from the OEM recommendation. If you're starting with a brand new build and it's really not based on much of an OEM or current OEM type design, you may have to do a little bit of experimenting to find what is optimal. But engines, until you reach a certain point where either the oil is no longer sufficient or you're way too heavy, they're pretty tolerant of viscosity grade, but optimizing that takes a little bit of know-how and some experimenting.
Okay, the other thing, of course, for a passenger car, if it works well on the higher viscosity, one thing that's going to be automatic is that it's going to be harder to pump through the engine, and we're going to have a fuel economy drop.
That's very true. It depends on how big the change is, but yes, typically, like I said earlier, changing nothing but the viscosity grade of the oil is directly going to affect the oil pressure that is developed while the engine is running. Higher oil pressure is an indication that it is more difficult to push the oil through the system. So it is taking more power, more energy to move that oil through the system. The result is potentially lower fuel economy, like you mentioned, but also higher oil operating temperature and reduced oil flow. And both of those are detrimental with respect to lubrication and oil life.
Gotcha. Well, Chris, we are out of time. Hopefully at some point maybe you would come back on and we could talk about some of the other aspects of different lubricants in different parts of the car and so on. Would really appreciate that.
Yeah, just let us know and we'll work out a time. I'd be happy to.
Okay, how can people get more information about Royal Purple?
Well, we have a website for the automotive side. It's royalpurpleconsumer.com. And there's lots of information on the products there, but we also have a contact page. We have a dedicated staff that work for me that are on hand Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, specifically to help customers with lubrication questions or product questions. So you can reach us by email, you can reach us by phone. Again, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 Central, somebody is always there to help out the customer with lubrication or product questions.
Wonderful. Well, I certainly appreciate you joining us, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Pat.
Okay, take care. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Jim and then Taryn. Coming up here on Goss's Garage.
Stay tuned. Pat will take your calls next at 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-GOSS. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
You probably don't think about it, but if you double the life of your car, your fixed expenses per mile will drop 50%. But how can you double the life of a car? Well, that's easy. Simply use BG products and flushes for your routine maintenance. I'll bet you know someone whose cars last a lot longer than yours, plus they never seem to have problems. Now you can enjoy those great savings too. Simply enroll in the BG Protection Plan, and BG will guarantee covered parts for as long as you own your car, in writing. With the BG Protection Plan, long after your car is paid off, you'll still have years of warranty left. Think about it. No payments and no worries about major repair bills. That's amazing. It's almost too good to be true because the BG Protection Plan is also absolutely free. My cars are covered by the BG Protection Plan. Yours should be too. For details, bgprod.com or 800-327-8883.
This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss. Call the show now at 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-GOSS. And now, Pat Goss.
For more information on today's topic or any topic about buying, repairing, or selling an automobile, visit goss-garage.com or call our 24-hour listener line at 844-885-4677. Now, let's go to Pennsylvania and talk to Jim. Jim, welcome to Goss's Garage.
Thank you so much, Pat. Just some great guests today with great information.
Thank you.
My question today was, I went to the Honda dealer last night as part of other customers who bought new cars, sort of a info session. And what they emphasized, and it sort of goes along with your guest today, was that to use OEM parts and fluids with the new vehicles. Everything from don't go out and buy a wiper blade at Advanced Auto and put it on your new car. Bring it to us. We'll put in a nice new rubber refill. You'll be good to go. You get much better performance. The other thing they brought up was with tires. Don't go out and just buy another Michelin tire that's got the same size on it. They were talking about buying the tires from them with the specific speed ratings for the tire that are engineered and matched to the Honda vehicles. So I just wanted to get your take on what they were saying and if you agree with, for the most part, using OEM parts for these newer vehicles.
Well, yeah, some things, but to go back to the dealer and pay 3 times as much for a quart of their oil, where you could buy a better product for 1/3 as much in the aftermarket, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Same with an air filter or a bunch of other things like that. Wiper blades, yeah, maybe the OEM is probably going to look better. It's going to be styled to match the car better. You're going to pay considerably more for it, but, I don't know that it's going to work any better. As far as tires are concerned, it just depends on their price on the tires, because you can buy the same load rating, the same tread pattern, the same everything, and if you go to a site like Tire Rack, it will actually point out the tire in that brand that was the original equipment on the car. and you can save a lot of money that way.
Thanks, Pat. I get it.
Oh.
Have a great day.
All right, take care. All right, Taryn from New York City. Welcome to Goss's Garage.
Thank you very much. How are you doing today?
Okay.
So my question is, I got a 05 Jaguar X-Type. We've let it set for a year. Now that we're using it, we're getting to get coolant being spewed out of the number 4 coil pack. We're leaning towards a head gasket, but do you think that's the case? And if so, what's involved in it?
Number 4 coil pack. Yeah, it's more than likely it's going to be a head gasket, although there are a couple of other possibilities. We have seen, and I don't know if it applies to that one or not, we've seen some where there are some hoses nearby that allow coolant to leak from a connection, and the coolant will run along a groove where you don't see it, and then ultimately you see it around the coil.
We're also getting a misfire too on the number 4, so that could be it too.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. I would certainly check it just before I pulled the head off it and so on, because that's a major job, major job.
Definitely. And if it is the head gasket, what's usually involved in it? It's a 3-liter motor.
We don't tear enough of those down. I can't tell you step by step, but any overhead cam head gasket job is major, because you have to have special tools to hold cams in place, and alignment tools to align the chains or the belt, and different things like that get to be pretty complex, and most people wouldn't have the tools to do it. The other thing is that most all engines these days use torque to yield bolts, the head bolts themselves. And that means that you have to replace the head bolts. You can't reuse them. And you have to have both a torque wrench and a dial indicator, angle indicator that tells you how many degrees that you have turned the bolt and different things like that. So it usually means that you need a $500 or $600 combination torque wrench and angle meter. So these are all things that you get into on modern engines that most people, they don't even have access to this stuff.
That is true, yeah. Alrighty, Pat. Much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Okay, take care. Oh, my goodness gracious. That's an interesting thing about all of this stuff that people used to be able to do themselves. It wasn't a big deal 15 years ago on a lot of engines to do a head gasket. Even the average backyard mechanic could do one, with no intricacies to them or anything. You unbolted the head, you lifted it up, you cleaned things up, you put the gasket on, you set the head on it, and you torque the head bolts. Well, not anymore. There are all of these different things now based on overhead camshafts and things like that. One of the things that you have to remember is that if you have a bad head gasket, the first thing you have to do is you have to check the head to make sure that the head is completely flat from end to end, from side to side in several spots along the length of the head, and on a diagonal across from corner to corner. Now, many of these heads only allow like 1 or 2 thousandths of an inch. See, back in the day, if the head was warped and wasn't flat on the underside, you just machined metal off it. Well, you can't do that with engines with overhead cams, because anything that is distorted on the bottom of the head is distorted on the top of the head where the camshafts are. So you machine the bottom of it, make it perfectly flat, but you still have this distortion up on the top. Now you bolt it down to the engine, and what happens? Well, you've got this distortion in the top of the head, the camshaft is in a bind, and if everything works, it may not work for long because that bind in the camshaft where the top of the head is bowed, that may eat up the cam bearings in very short order. So you wind up with a situation where you lose oil pressure and all of these things because somebody machined the bottom of the head. Used to be standard practice, no longer standard practice. No way, no how. So you have to know all of these things about checking a cylinder head and so on in order to be able to replace a head gasket. The other thing is that aluminum heads, you have to make sure that they're not cracked. Well, that means taking them to a good machine shop, and the machine shop is going to bolt them to this big metal plate. Then they're going to heat the head because cracks often only show up when the metal is hot. And then they're going to pressurize the head while it's under a liquid to see if there are any bubbles that come out. Now, these are things that you can't do at home. And these are things that have to be done. So if you wonder why that head gasket that used to cost $250 now costs $1,250, it's all of these steps that are necessary and the extra labor and so on to align camshafts and align timing chains and set up the variable valve timing and all of this other stuff that goes into a modern engine. So yeah, it's a lot more costly. So if you're looking, like I mentioned in the opening of the show, if you're looking for one of these cheap-ass shops that is going to pull the head off and slap a gasket in there like the good old days, you may be throwing a lot of money away unless they go through all of these steps to make sure that everything is the way it should be. Hey folks, we've done it one more time. Thanks for listening, and thanks to Steve McMillan, George Stockton, and Chris DePamphilis for producing today's show. For everyone here at Goss's Garage, I'm Pat Goss. Until next time, please everybody, drive gently. See ya.